Jeff Bezos didn't like wake up one day and was like, I'm going to be the richest person in the world, and I'm going to provide hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs. And no, he just wanted to, he decided, he noticed that there was a void in bookstores online. And if you watch a lot of the stuff on the history of Amazon, people told him he was crazy. Like, you're going to compete with Borders and Barnes and Nobles and libraries? What the fuck, are you nuts? He's gonna buy books online, and now he's a monopoly. Apparently, he's monopolized the U.S. economy. Jeff Bezos. That's McDonald's. Yeah, here we go. According to Wikipedia, he worked at McDonald's as a short order line cook during the breakfast shift. So look at this. Jeff Bezos. One of his first jobs was being a slave for his bourgeoisie overlords at the McDonald's Corporation. He was a slave, you guys. And he was destined to just be a short order line cook, making Egg McMuffins and McGriddles and pancakes at McDonald's forever and ever, because this is the brutal truth of cat. Oh, wait a minute. He became one of the most successful businessmen and entrepreneurs in the history of mankind. So let's turn our attention to this video from Richard Wolff. This was posted on my recent video about Richard Wolff and his desire to democratize the workplace. This is called Wolff Responds: Why Capitalism is not a market system, folks.
This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with...
Let's speed this up a bit. Democracy at Work.
Another Wolff Responds, 5 weeks, counting to the election. I want to talk about why capitalism is not a market system. Why calling capitalism a market economy, a free market economy, a market system.
That's how I would classify capitalism. It is a free market where individuals are free to exchange goods and services, free from coercion.
Is not only a mistake, but a mistake that reveals something important for us to understand. So let's go through this. It won't take long. A market is a way of distributing things.
Not necessarily.
Exchanging is a way for me to take something I have and give it to you, and you in exchange give me something. In other words, we distribute each to the other.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily about distribution. It's more about just voluntary free trade. For instance, right now, I am active on eBay trying to get a copy of Sonic Gems Collection for GameCube so I can start playing some Sonic CD. And if I end up winning the auction at, say, $25 plus $5 shipping via FedEx, if I win the auction, I am giving someone $25 and they're going to send me a copy of Sonic Gems Collection. Now, you wouldn't say like, oh, this is someone making sure that I get a proper distribution of the video game Sonic Gems. No, it's just someone has something that I want, and they want money because they don't really want the game anymore for whatever reason. But it's not like this that capitalism is all about making sure everyone has a proper distribution of video game discs. Because eventually, as we're seeing video game discs, hard copies of video games are, I would say, currently being phased out in favor of just hard download storage on your respective hard drive.
It's a way of distributing the products of human labor. It's also a way of distributing the resources that go into making the products of human labor. As soon as people stop being self-sufficient, that is, as soon as we stopped having families working the land and raising everything they ate and making everything they wore and building their shelters, as soon as we had division of labor,
which happens due to capitalism.
Produce this, you produce that, and so on. We had to work out a system of...
Yeah, capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, made working as subsistence farmers, made that rather obsolete. The division of labor.
Distributing. If I make the bread, it's got to be distributed to all the people who eat it.
Now, again, if I'm making the bread, I'm making the bread so I could sell it and make money and sell it at a price I like. And maybe I want to make all kinds of bread. I want to make banana bread and raisin bread and wheat bread. pumpkin spiced flavored bread for October season, for the fall, for Halloween. Sourdough bread, rye bread, whatever bread you guys like. But I'm doing it to make money. I'm not doing it because I'm the best at distributing bread. Now, I'll be good at distributing bread because I want to make that money. If I'm not good at distributing it, then I'm not going to make a lot of money. Someone's going to do it better and maybe put me out of business.
If I only make bread, then the shirt I'm wearing has to come from somebody else, and so on. Markets are a way of distributing goods and services. Markets are not the only way. Human beings have had many other ways. We have many other ways today. When you sit down for dinner or lunch with your friends or your family, you are, some of you, producing the food, and others of you receiving it to eat it. There's a distribution going on there, but it's highly unlikely that a market is the way it's done.
I mean, it's still done through the market. You still have to buy the food from somewhere. But even if you are growing and producing all the food yourself, I think Stephen Michael Davis mentioned in one of his videos about the $1,200 sandwich. I guess some guy wanted to make a sandwich all by himself without, the distribution of labor. And I think he spent $1,200 and it took him like 6 months to like grow the food and all that stuff and to finally make all the stuff necessary just to make a sandwich. But even if you were to do that, you would still probably need to buy your cooking utensils and your stove and your oven and your table and your china, your silverware from other markets. So there would still be market forces involved. If you're inviting people over to eat dinner, you'd probably still need to buy electricity and heat from somewhere. There's still market forces at play, whether you like it or not.
Rather, Mama distributes if she's the cook, or Papa distributes if he's the cook, and the rest of you eat, and so forth and so on. It is bizarre to call capitalism a market system.
Why?
Here are some more reasons. Capitalism involves production, but markets don't have to do with production.
The fuck they don't. Markets don't have to do with production. How can you trade stuff and sell stuff on a market if it's not produced in the first place?
That's a mystery.
Markets have to do with exchange and distribution of things, not with their production.
Well, where do those things come from, huh?
Here's another reason. Slavery had markets.
True.
To talk about markets does not mean you're talking about capitalism. It might very well mean you're talking about slavery. For example, the American South before the Civil War was a slave system. There was a market in slaves, there was a market in the cotton that the slaves produced, and so on.
And the key distinction was that was not a free market because the slaves were not free. The distinction of capitalism is the freedom in the marketplace. And yeah, you can go on and on. There are black markets where banned goods and services from the market, like in Prohibition, alcohol. There was a black market in alcohol where mobsters and gangs were producing and trading alcohol under the nose of law enforcement. That was still a black market. It was still a market, but it was not a free market. So Richard's big argument is, because there are other types of markets other than capitalism, therefore capitalism is not a market. What astonishing logic.
Markets are not unique to capitalism. They certainly don't define capitalism. The same is true of feudalism. In many parts of feudalism, serfs produced goods delivered to the lords, who then sold these goods in markets.
And they weren't free either. The serfs under the peasants and the serfs under feudalism were not free.
Sometimes the serfs themselves had markets. Europe is full of serf market monuments. So again, it's bizarre that we have come to call capitalism a market system.
It's just bizarre, you guys. Didn't you know that there was a market in slavery and black markets and markets during feudalism? Therefore, capitalism is not a market.
Systems existed long before we have modern capitalism. Well then, two questions. What is capitalism if it isn't a market system? And even more important, why, if it isn't a market system, has capitalism been called that all the time, right to this present day? I would argue that capitalism is distinctive not because of its use of markets, because, as I've shown, they existed long before modern capitalism or any
so capitalism's not a market.
kind of capitalism existed. I think capitalism is unique because of the way it carries out production. And what do I mean? It divides the people involved in
Oh,
production
it actually has production.
into two groups. Those who make all the decisions and run the enterprise, we call them the owner, the major shareholders, the board of directors, the CEO. We all know who they are.
We know you want to call them the bourgeoisie, Richard, you Marxist moron. Come on, just spit it out. Cut the bullshit. This is your Marxism coming out. Oh, capitalism. It's just a new battle between the haves and the have-nots. It used to be the lords and the serfs, and now it's the bourgeoisie and the proletariat.
They are a minority, a small minority of those involved in production. The vast majority, the other group in production, is called the employees. They are excluded from making all the key decisions.
Excluded.
Which is a big clue as to why capitalism makes those at the top.
Now, even this is not true because even under a free market, even in our mixed economy, we still have freelancers and private contractors outside of the state of California, of course. But this would probably still be the case in the free market. In a real free market, you'd probably still have freelancers and private contractors that are not necessarily beholden to an employer, that don't work exclusively for one employer. So right there, he's full of shit. And on top of that, he talks about this as if the employers and the employees, they're just stuck in their lot in life forever. As if employees, as if people who start off as employees don't eventually go on to start their own business, maybe get promoted to the point where they are in the employer position. People don't move up. People don't move on from being an employee. Also, it may just be ideal or advantageous. There are some advantages to just being an employee. Not everyone should or wants to be an employer. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of hours, a lot of risk. And a lot of times it's just easier. It's just preferable for some people to just accept a 9-to-5 where they don't have to worry about making difficult decisions, where they don't have to deal with government regulators and overseas distributors and PR nonsense. So it might just be preferable sometimes for people to just be an employee. And fundamentally, even if you're an employee, you are still selling your labor on the market. You just happen to be working for someone who has a lot of jobs, and they're offering opportunities. They're offering money in exchange for someone who could reliably perform tasks and duties for an extended period of time. But according to Richard Wolff, this is just a new form of slavery, which is just insane.
Rich and powerful, and the employees neither. It's no surprise given how it's organized.
So basically, if you go to work at Starbucks and they pay you to make lattes and make coffee and bake muffins, you're basically a slave to Howard Schultz. So if you're making Starbucks in exchange for $14 an hour and health benefits and whatnot, you're making a coffee for an endless line of people. That's the same as picking cotton on a hot farm in Mississippi in 1841. Get the fuck out of here, Richard.
In this way, capitalism, although different from feudalism and slavery, shares something. Those systems also had a small minority at the top who made all the key decisions and who became wealthy and powerful, while the majority didn't. In slavery, it's masters and slaves. In feudalism, it's lords and serfs. And in capitalism, it's employers and employees.
Same thing, you guys.
Isn't that interesting? So then why, if what's distinctive about capitalism is the relationship between the employer and the employee, which is quite different from that between lord and serf and master and slave, even though there are also some similarities, well then let's answer the question, why this confusing, mistaken notion of calling capitalism a market system when that really makes no sense?
It's not confusing at all.
The answer is ideological. The market is an attractive way of describing capitalism. Why? Because there's something voluntary about a market. When you go to market, you can buy A, or B, or C. You are not forced into something. You can choose to part with your money, or you can hold on to your money. You can buy this or that. And only if you're comfortable and happy with the outcome will you make the exchange that defines what goes on in a market. So it's nice to describe capitalism in this way as a market system because it gives you the illusion of freedom.
The illusion of freedom.
Of a quid pro quo. I only give up if I get something equivalent.
Of course, I did a video on this. Richard Wolff does not believe it's possible for you to make decisions in your own self-interest anyway. He talked about this, I think over a year ago when he was on the Michael Brooks show. I'll link to it when I put it on YouTube.
In exchange. What capitalism is really about is what is not talked about. The system of production. What goes on in the workplace.
Oh, so he doesn't like that capitalism results in production?
You know, before you can distribute a resource, there has to be a production process for which that resource is an input.
Oh, really, huh?
And before you can distribute outputs, there has to be the production that produces the output.
Yeah, no shit.
So it is kind of bizarre in discussing.
He just said that production isn't part of the marketplace. Now he's saying, oh, before something gets to the market, it has to be produced. Unbelievable.
In capitalism, that you would call it a market system rather than an employer-employee system.
I would say that the employer-employee relationship is a symptom. It is a likely consequence, but it is not a guarantee. You still have the free will to choose what you want to do.
Now let's look finally at the employer-employee. First of all, it's glaringly undemocratic. The majority of people do not make the decisions. The majority of people in a capitalist workplace have no power at all. They come to work, they cross the threshold into the factory, the office, the store, and they immediately are told what to do.
Oh no, someone who's paying you money in exchange for performing duties and tasks wants you to do the duties and tasks. Wow, what a horror.
Here, work there, do this, do it that way.
Imagine hiring someone to, I don't know, pave your driveway. And you're saying, look, okay, I need a new driveway. Why don't you break up the current concrete that's kind of eroding and breaking down? And I want a nice 12-foot by 40-foot rectangle next to my house. And they're like, oh, you're telling me what to do. Man. Okay, well, if you don't want to do it, I'll pay someone else to do it. How about that? Or going back to my Starbucks example. Starbucks. Okay, I'm going to pay you $14 an hour in health insurance benefits. From what I know, Starbucks offers employees health insurance. And you're gonna work the register and you're gonna make coffee and lattes and whatever other drinks, teas that we make here at Starbucks, because that's what people come to Starbucks for. They want nice, delicious coffee, convenient and efficiently. And you're like, what? Why? Well, because I'm paying you. That's why. If you want the money, you gotta do the work.
When you don't do the job right, you don't get paid.
Work with that machine, and at 5 o'clock, get out of here. And whatever you've produced, what you've poured your brains and muscles into helping to make, belongs to the employer. You get nothing. At the end of the week,
you get paid, don't you?
You get a wage. Go home, drink some beer, eat some pizza, and come back tomorrow and do it all again.
Of course, beer and pizza would probably not exist. It'd probably be in short supply under Richard Wolff utopia.
You're told what to do. You're not free at all. Oh, well, I take that back. You can quit. And then you'll live exactly how? You know what you'll end up doing 9 times out of 10? Going and working for another employer in the same arrangement. The production system of capitalism is undemocratic. It's authoritarian.
Well, it's definitely not democratic, but it's not authoritarian. If you don't want to work for a certain company, the CEO can't come around with guns and handcuffs and haul you off, can't throw you in jail. If you don't want to buy a product from a certain company, if I don't want to buy a Switch, a video game console from Nintendo, they're not allowed to put a gun in my head and say, no, you buy our console.
The minority tell the majority what to do. The kings we got rid of in political society 500 years ago, they still live inside our enterprises, but they're called CEOs.
Yeah, so Jeff Bezos and King Henry VIII, basically the same person.
And we bend over for them as least as much as people used to bend over for their kings. No, capitalism isn't a market system. It's an authoritarian production system that has outlived its usefulness. It is now a drag on the human race.
Look how mad he is.
As we can see from the disasters of global warming, the disasters of a failed dealing with COVID, the disaster.
Well, the dealings with COVID has been largely a failure of our philosopher kings and our economic planners.
Of grotesque inequality, and I could go on.
Oh, no, not inequality.
Let's start by wising up. Capitalism isn't a market system. The only idea behind calling it that was to deflect, to distract us from the reality of the workplace, the production system, where the ugliness and the dysfunction of capitalism exist and will be visible once we can call capitalism.
It's just bourgeoisie propaganda, you guys.